You like arguments.
Yeah, it's been known to happen.
You've always been disagreeable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Does that get
Yeah.
you into trouble? Like, does that damage your interpersonal relationships, or what impact does that have on your life?
Oh, for sure, I'm holistically argumentative. That means with my family and partners and everyone else too. Some people are fine with that, and those are the people I tend to get along the best with, and some people aren't, and obviously that was never really gonna work out. Thankfully, my family tolerates it, and as I've gotten older, I've gotten a bit better at knowing how to place it, like, which arguments are worth having, I mean. Like, I would never argue with my grandpa or something, right? Like, what the fuck's the point of that? Like, dude's 90 or something, I'm not gonna, like, why? But it's definitely sort of a general trait. Frankly, I think that more people should be argumentative. One of the big problems that I've had interpersonally is that people tend to be very shy when it comes to their personal desires or beliefs. So rather than
Mhm.
expressing them confidently, they kind of clam up and they don't really say anything. So you don't like know where they stand on something. You don't know if they're getting upset or if they agree with you or whatever. That's kind of frustrating. I think people should be direct.
Do you have a hard time in general with, like, in kind of implicit stuff or, like, indirect stuff? Like, 'cause I find a lot of people who prefer the more explicit stuff also tend to sometimes struggle in the more implied or
Oh,
unclear
yeah, for
things.
sure. Oh, yeah, this is 100% an autism thing, absolutely. I try to get folks to be direct as possible when I'm talking with them because I hate ambiguity of any kind,
Right.
when interpersonally or in debate or anything like that. But I think that's holistically good, though. I think, even people who are neurotypical would benefit from people being more direct with each other. I mean, how many rom-coms, the normiest of all genres, right? How many rom-coms are, like, sort of predicated on miscommunication between people who don't like each other or do like each other or something, right? It clearly it's a problem we all suffer from. So directness is good, I think.
Right. So when you speak about the autism, when were you diagnosed? It sounds like there's a legitimate diagnosis there. So when did you get diagnosed with autism?
That was like it must have been like 6 or 7 or something. Actually, the
Okay.
interesting thing is I didn't get officially written down. The gist of it was that at the time, because of Beverly Hills school district policy, as I
Mhm.
understand, I'm remembering this from like 15 years ago or maybe longer. So I'm trying to remember this proper. But if I remember correctly, if you got diagnosed with something like autism or ADHD, you got automatically referred to the special needs courses, which wasn't
Mhm.
deemed necessary for me because I was doing just fine in the classes. So my parents was like, "Hey, why is my son a moron?" Hit my head. And the doctor's like, "Oh yeah, it's definitely autism, but like if I write you up, like this will happen probably." And my parents were like, probably not. We're not going to do that then." So it's just been sort of the undiagnosed diagnosis since then, which has been sort of reinforced every mannerism that I've engaged in since. But I'm happy that they didn't go through that because them special needs courses are fucking terrible. They are
Yeah.
100% about finding a box to throw like different kids in. It's super fucked up.
Interesting. Okay. So a lot of people who are neurodivergent tend to really struggle in kind of the what I would argue is the very neurotypical structures that we've arisen, particularly with like academics and schooling. And yet you've pursued pretty high levels of academia. What how did you navigate that with autism? Like did you have major struggles? Did you get any students with disabilities supports, or were you just like really, really high functional?
I'm reasonably high functional, so I don't want to pretend that it was all just me muscling up and getting through it. I was too prideful to try and seek any help, so I did real bad with all the homework and such. But I like studying for tests. I like doing well in tests. And you can reason out most of the answers to a test from the test itself if you know a bit about the subject material. So
Mhm.
I didn't struggle too much with any of that. It's not like American education's like, that difficult or anything. It's more the social responsibilities and expectations of schooling, I think, that a lot of folks struggle with. Thankfully, it's a lot easier to like get around some of the difficult stuff if you really, really, really like speaking. Because if you do really like speaking, you can kind of gamify the parts of social interactions that you would normally otherwise struggle with and not have to deal with those in the way you might otherwise have to.
I've noticed, for example, you do like a beard stroking. Somebody tried to tell me that that was like Tourette's. Is that just an autistic, like self-soothing tick?
It's a stimming thing. I try not to do that because it's fucking annoying. But yeah, I do it before I even realize I'm doing it. I'm trying not to right now. I'm
Yeah,
trying to willpower my way out of that one. It's like biting your
that
nails.
is. Self-stimming, yeah. Most self-stimming is kind of like it's happening and then you realize that you're doing it.
Yeah, it's super annoying. Yeah, if it was like a conscious behavior, it'd be easy enough to stop, but you don't even realize that it's happening. So.
Did you find that there was many like interpersonal issues that arose for you that that you would like lay at the feet of autism, or
Well,
what was that experience like for
I
you?
was really bad at understanding other people's intentions for a long time. I got better
Mhm.
at it just sort of over time, just through the natural process of sort of self-education. And I got a lot better at it when I started streaming, because it's actually really difficult to be autistic when you're streaming, because all your
Yes.
behavior is getting like micro scrutinized constantly by a huge audience. So if you do anything that's even a little bit weird, you'll immediately be made aware of it, and you'll try to like, or it's very rapid education there. So that's helpful in a way. But earlier on in my life, I was really bad at reading people's intentions, and I was just a giant cringe lord. Just a full-on like fedora tipping atheist type, like libertarian, like no, like the whole archetype. You know what I
Madam?
mean? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
like just an utter buffoon. But I owned it very confidently, which I think that's important, right? Because for me, I wasn't doing it because I thought it would make something of me. I was doing it because I was authentically that cringe. So, at the very least, it was a direct expression of my my divergent tendencies there. It didn't exactly earn me many friends up through high school, but as
Mhm.
long as you make your way through that process feeling reasonably self-confident, I think that's okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting talking with people, especially like neurotypical people who are not used to anybody with autism, is the breakdown of communication that happens at like both layers of both like oftentimes autistic people will misread, misunderstand what's being communicated. And then when they communicate back, the neurotypical person will also typically misunderstand and misread what the autistic person is trying to communicate. And so there's often kind of dual layers of miscommunication going on, which is a really big thing I had to work on with my dad once I realized that was going on, is being like, oh, we're missing each other at two levels. Like I'm missing what he's saying and he's missing what I'm saying back.
Yeah, no, I completely agree 100%, which is why I favor bluntness, because the more direct everyone involved is, the less likely that miscommunication is to occur. Like you can be in like the lesbian situation where both people are saying like I want to fuck you, and both of them are thinking, "Oh, is she just being nice?" So it's possible that even total directness can be met with obliviousness, but I think it's much more difficult the more upfront people are being, which is why I tend to favor that. And neurotypical people get confused with each other all the time as well. So it's just a big old mess. People are scared. There's a lot of cowardice when people communicate. It's this like meta game of what you're willing to give and what you're not willing to give, which there can be value to playing. It's just a general part of participating in like the socialization process. You can't like undo
Mhm.
society overnight or some bullshit like that. But I do think you can help a bit by being like the straight shooter in the group. I think people appreciate that. I think that's a good thing to be.
Right. But then as being a straight shooter, you're going to get hit with the fact of sometimes bluntness also is like not very sensitive to how people are feeling. Right. So like bluntness runs the risk of like hurting people's feelings and upsetting people and like offending people.
That's true. I
How have you
think you
navigated that?
I think you should be blunt about you and not so blunt about other people. Like the more a topic is on a subject where the entirety of your knowledge is like kind of covers it, like your feelings or how you're interacting with how you feel about something. Like in those instances, I think bluntness is always good. I guess there's still ways to fuck that up, but for the most part. But if you're making statements about other people, like for example, people with insecurities, right? It's a minefield talking to people with insecurities because God only knows, right? It's a whole thing. Trying to be blunt there, even if you're really like, you're very charismatic, you know what's going on, you know this person, probably not a good idea because, maybe it'll work, but it probably won't. It's probably not worth the risk either. But being straightforward just about your feelings, I think once people realize that that's what you're doing, they get a lot more comfortable around you because they kind of stop doing this constant second triple guessing on whether or not you're playing some other game. I noticed that a
Mhm.
lot, not just interpersonally. It happens a lot in my experience. I mean, obviously when people are like macking up each other or whatever, people are flirting, but also like in interactions where there's an imbalance in income, right? Because I make a lot off streaming. So it's like, oh, I'll pay for your drink or whatever. And a lot of people, when they hear that, it's like, what are they getting out of this? Or like, is something
Is
being
there a
bought?
string? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And that's really annoying from my perspective because I just, I'll just whatever, I'll buy the thing. But the more direct you are, I think the less that crops up, and that's preferable.
Obviously you've had some like pretty major dramas in the space with different figures. And I'm now that I'm understanding about the autism and stuff, just so maybe everyone has an understanding for you, what does autism mean? Like, what do people need to understand about you when you say, like, I have a diagnosis of autism? That maybe would help neurotypicals, for example, like ground themselves in like having some level of understanding of what that actually means.
I don't normally ask anything of people with regards to it. I think I'm high functioning enough that I don't feel like I generally need accommodations. I mean, if there are tendencies that people are looking for, or like, oh, well, what would I be looking to identify to understand this or that, you know? Like a preference toward bluntness, a general inability to read ambiguity or mixed signals, an unwillingness to play complicated social games outside very basic, I'm on good terms with this person, bad terms with that person. Yeah, stuff like that. And I think I'm pretty consistent about those tendencies. That tends to crop up pretty, pretty consistently, I think.